It's 5:16. I'm going to go ahead and start the meeting. This is the Bluff Town Council regular meeting. Today is November 7th, 2023. It is 5:16 p.m. Roll call.
Linda Sosa.
Luanne Hook.
Brant Murray.
Ann Leppanen.
Erin Nelson, serving as town manager.
So we're changing the order of a few things. First, we're going to introduce John Hatterley from Larson and Company. He's on the call as well, and he's appearing virtually. He is with the company that performs our audits, and so we're going to hear from him. We'll see then what the time looks like, and perhaps then just move right into our regular meeting. So, John, go ahead.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm at a conference center and I've got my headphones in. So thanks for letting me hop in virtually. I know I wanted to try and get down there in person, but I'm actually in Vernal at another meeting for you in a county. So can I share my screen?
Sure, go right ahead.
All right. Let me see if I can. Let me do the entire screen. Okay, I am going to switch. You guys see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the audit report. So this is page 1 of the financials. It's 2 or 3 pages in the hard copy if you guys are looking at the hard copy, but it's page 5 of the PDF. I'll just quickly go over our reports and then our opinions, and then just a few things that I need to communicate to you. And then if you guys have questions, then happy to answer any questions. So the report always starts out now with the opinion. It used to be almost at the end, but they've put the opinion first in the report. So these first 2 paragraphs here just state, the first paragraph just says we've done the audit as of June 30th, 2023. So all the balances in the financial statements are as of June 30th. The second paragraph is our opinion. It's an unmodified or an unqualified opinion. I know that those words don't show up in that paragraph, but that is very accountant type language in that paragraph. And what that means is it's an unmodified, meaning we didn't have to modify our reports for the financial statements, or an unqualified opinion. It means it's good. I don't understand why accountants have to be backwards and we have to unqualify something if it's actually good, but the next paragraph is just the basis for our opinion. So this is the standards that we are required to follow when we perform audits. And you'll notice in there that we follow generally accepted auditing practices as well as government auditing standards. And there is a difference. There's additional things that we have to do in a government audit that we normally don't do in a private company or a nonprofit. The next paragraph, it really outlines just your responsibilities for the financial statements. And that is knowing and understanding the accounting principles, maintaining accurate books, and then the financial statements themselves. So even though we help draft the financial statements, we have Dave review the financial statements and make sure they tie down to the books and make sure that they're not anything missing, that the wording is appropriate and how you guys want it in the notes. There are different ways to word things. The second paragraph is, I think we talked maybe a little bit about this last year. This is kind of a new thing since COVID. But if there are conditions or events that arise during the year, while you're preparing financial reports for the board, Linda, or as a board reviewing those, then if there's conditions or events that arise that raise doubt about your ability to continue as a going concern, then you have to do an internal analysis to identify those issues, and then what are you going to do to overcome those issues in order to keep continuing on as a city or a town. Sorry. And then our responsibilities are laid out next, and you can just see the bullet points. So we have to exercise professional judgment. We have to identify and assess risk of material misstatements, and we'll talk a little bit about risks in a little bit. We have to look at your internal controls to make sure that A, you have internal controls, and B, that they're actually functioning. You can put in place all the controls you want, but if you're not following them and if they're not implemented properly, then they're not doing you any good. You have to, and then we look at your accounting principles and make sure that you're following the principles the correct way. And then that last bullet point is that during our test work, if there's conditions or events that we identify, then we have to do an analysis on your ability to continue as a going concern. And one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to ask you for your analysis, because you guys know that your town the most. And so if there are conditions or events, you're going to know, okay, this is the cause, this is what we're going to do to overcome it, and this is how we're going to overcome it. And then we'll just validate that as part of our procedures. Required supplementary information. Just remember that in the financial statements, there are different sections. So the management's discussion analysis, which always follows the audit report. So it's on this next page right here. So that section, as well as the required supplementary information after the notes to the financial statements, do not fall under our opinion. So they are not considered part of the basic financial statements, but they're required to be with the financial statements at all times to give them more readability and more understandability. And then this last paragraph just states that we've performed our audit in accordance with government auditing standards, and that we actually issue a report on that. So I'll hop down to that report, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that one because it hasn't changed. And this is really just relevance for us. Part of government auditing standards is we have to look at your internal controls, and we don't give an opinion on your controls, but what we're doing is we're trying to find deficiencies, like material weaknesses, significant deficiencies, or a single control deficiency that would result in a material misstatement in the financial statement. So if there is anything that we identify, then we have to report that as part of this letter. But we didn't identify any of those, so that's why I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. The next report we issue is for the state auditor. So we are required to look and give an opinion on your compliance as it relates to your budgetary compliance, restricted taxes, government fees, fund balance, and the fraud risk assessment. Just make sure that you do all those, that you're in compliance with those. And then we give an opinion, and our opinion is that you complied in all material respects with those specific areas. And I say specific because our opinion is very specific to those areas. It's not a legal opinion, and it's not an opinion on whether or not you're following the entirety of Utah code. There are other sections of the code that we will build into our audit because I feel like they're more relevant than what the state auditor wants us to look at for. So like the 3-day deposit rule, we make sure that the money that's coming into the town is actually making it to the bank. I feel like that's more relevant to our job as auditors looking at your financials than, say, the fraud risk assessment. I don't really like the fraud risk assessment. I wish they would just get rid of it. I don't think it gives them the information that's relevant and really accurate for each of the government entities, because they're trying to do a one size fits all. And, you're filling out the same form that Salt Lake City's filling out. And you know that Bluff Town is completely different than Salt Lake City. So you're going to have completely different results. And so you don't get to identify what controls you have in place as a small town versus Salt Lake City, who has the ability to have a lot more controls or different controls because they're bigger. They have more technology. Typically along the Wasatch Front, you have more access to people who have accounting degrees and things like that. But with that comes the risk of typically they're smarter at hiding or concealing fraud. So you have to have other controls in place. And that fraud risk assessment really doesn't address those issues. So I don't really like the fraud risk assessment. So we just make sure that you fill it out to be in compliance. But if we find issues with your controls, we're going to talk to you about those to make sure that you guys are doing the best job that you can and you have the best practices in Bluff. All right, let me switch to the communication letter real quick. Maybe. Let me switch. Okay. Sorry, I don't have my mouse. I'm using my touchpad. All right, so this is information. This letter is separate from the financial statements for a reason, and that is because this is communication directly to you as a town council. And so if somebody requests your financial statements, you do not give them this letter unless it's like the state auditor. They're going to get a copy of it just to see if there's any findings or anything. But this is communication from us to you at the close of our audit. So this first top section, it just talks about the plan, scope, and timing of our audit and what the scope is of our audit, and then what we're going to do inside the audit. that information is all contained in the engagement letter. That's why we have you sign an engagement letter. So that's the engagement letter is going to provide you a lot more information than these paragraphs right here. Compliance with ethical requirements regarding independence. So we have ethical requirements and we have independence requirements that we're required to follow as a firm. And that responsibility lies with me as the partner, not you as the town council. So you're kind of alleviated from that responsibility of making sure that we're independent. It's my job to know what those rules are and to make sure that not only is my team, but our entire firm is independent of Bluff. So what would impair our independence is if you have a close personal relationship with anybody in our firm, like blood relation. We can get around it depending on, if whether or not they're a partner in the firm. Other ways that we impair our independence is if we're making management decisions, then so if I were to come down and do some consulting and say, well, this based on your information, this is what I would do as a town, and then I make the decision for you, then I'm impairing my independence. I have to come down and say, this is all of the information that you've given me, and this is my understanding of the information, and this would be our recommendations. Now you guys go make the decision. So we can perform consulting. We just have to be careful that we don't cross that line of what we're making the decision. Significant risk. So I told you we would talk about risks. We're actually going to redo this paragraph because I've had a lot of pushback on the way that the template is worded. And this is very standard language. And what this is talking about is all of our audits are risk-based. So everything in your financial statements is assigned a risk. So if we start with cash, then it's assigned a risk. And we move to capital assets, they're assigned a risk. We move to revenue, fund balance. So every area is assigned a risk. And based on their inherent nature, that risk might be high and it might be low. So with cash, it's very easy to manipulate cash. It's very easy to misappropriate cash. So inherently, cash is going to have a higher risk versus capital assets. It's very hard to pick up a building and take a building. It's very hard to steal a truck without somebody noticing and then quickly calling it in, right? So typically, capital assets have a lower risk. What that means is anything that has a higher risk, we have to do more procedures over, or different types of procedures over those areas to come to the same comfort level to make sure that they're materially stated correctly. And then overall, we have significant risks, and this is based on your size. It's based on that you're a government entity. It's based on a lot of external factors that we have, not necessarily anything that you're doing specifically to warrant these risks. So improper revenue recognition, that's one. It doesn't matter what type of entity you are, we have to recognize that as a significant risk. And that's just accounting standards, auditing standards. Cash disbursements, you're a government entity. People are concerned about how you're spending your money, that you're within budget, and that money's not, somehow finding its way out of the town inappropriately. And then management's bias and the ability to override control. So these have to do with internal control. So you can build bias into your financial statements. So like I said, there's different ways to word like the notes, and based on how you word them, they could mean something different. Or you can influence the external users of the financial statements just by the way you word the notes. So we make sure that there's not any bias built into the financial statements. Estimates, we look at your estimates. And the reason why is because over time, those estimates can change. You want to make sure that those estimates are as consistent as possible so that you have good financial data year to year to year that you can look back on in order to make future decisions on financial means of the city. And then overriding controls. This is just an inherent limitation of internal controls. There are certain controls, like Linda has to have the ability to create a journal entry. That is a correction control because all of your financial systems should be built on transactions. And those journal entries are actually correcting transactions. But with those journal entries, then you can do inappropriate things in the financial statements. So that's why it's kind of an inherent limitation, because it's kind of on one side it's good, on one side it's not so good, but you have to have that ability. So we just make sure that, like with journal entries, what we do is we actually look at every journal entry that's created in the system for the entire year. And we make sure that we understand what the journal entry is doing. We make sure that it's appropriate and that there's been a proper approval. All right. Accounting practices, I talked about that. We've talked about estimates, financial statements, disclosures. If there are disclosures that are inconsistent or unclear or have management bias built into them, then we typically will disclose that here, as well as any difficulties during the audit. We didn't have any of those. To my knowledge, there weren't any uncorrected misstatements. I think any journal entries that we had were included in your trial balance, so that your trial balance now matches the audit statement. Disagreements with management. We didn't have any disagreements. Circumstances that affect the form and content of the auditor's report. If you remember when I was talking about our opinion, an unmodified report means that it's the standard language for an audit report. If we find something that we either cannot audit or there's not documentation enough to provide us with sufficient evidence, then we have to change the audit report and we have to make notes of that in the audit report. So that's the kind of things that are going to change the content of the audit report. But there wasn't anything for that. Management representations, we get a representation letter from you. This is kind of like our engagement letter to you, letting you know, this is what we're doing in the audit. This is the scope. The representation letter is that you've been honest and forthcoming with any and all information that we need to be made aware of as part of our audit test work, so that when we give our opinion, you're not hiding anything that's not in the financial statements that potentially could affect the opinion. Let's see, I think that's pretty much all on that audit letter. So as you can see, there weren't any internal control findings this year, no state compliance findings. So once again, it's a clean audit with no findings. I know that we talk a lot throughout the year with, no, let me try and minimize this. Did it go back to my camera? All right, there we go. I know that we talk with Linda and Mayor quite often during the year about certain things, and how you guys are, approaching things in the books and making sure that you're up to date and that you're doing a good job. And I think this audit reflects just how well the staff is doing. So I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'm happy to answer questions.
Does anyone on the council have a question? Brant.
Hey, John, thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Would you say that a journal entry has a risk near cash? Is that kind of, I was trying to think about your risk thing. What's a journal entry risk factor? Just general information.
So if, let's say that, I don't want to teach you how to commit fraud, but I'll give you that as an example. I can tell you 150 ways to commit fraud because I've probably seen a lot of them. So if Brant, if you had access to the books and you went in and you cut yourself a check, and then you went in and you changed that check, or you went to a journal entry and then you recoded that check rather from going to you and code it to another expense, then that would be how you would misappropriately use a journal entry. So journal entries are correcting transactions. So if Linda enters a transaction, let's say that she receives a payment for property taxes, and then she records the revenue, but she puts it to the wrong revenue account. She doesn't need to delete that transaction and then redo the transaction. She would get in and do a journal entry that says, okay, I need to move this revenue from sales taxes up to property taxes. So that's a good use of a journal entry. Or if you're closing your books at the end of the year, there's a lot of entries that actually close out balances at the end of the year. So that's appropriate uses of journal entries. But if you say, we coded these supplies to the supplies expense, but now we're over budget, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to take those out of supplies, even though they really are supplies, and I'm going to put them down in Parks and Recreation, so that it shows that I'm within budget in all of my accounts. So you're now using it for the wrong reason.
Gotcha. What a compliment to Linda and Ann and Erin and all our staff for years and years of great audits, and just thank our staff and John's group.
Thanks,
Yep, and
Brant.
I appreciate Mayor reaching this out to us a few years ago. I think it's been really awesome working with your town and watching you guys grow. So
Thanks. Well, I've been really happy because, as everyone knows, budgets are and numbers are not my thing, and I always feel like when we go through the audit, I'm a little nervous, but your team has always been great and given us the time to respond. So thank you so much. Anybody have a question?
absolutely.
Well, John, let
Hello,
us know.
John. Nice to see you again.
Oh, yep, Jim, good to see you.
So, John, next time you're in Bluff, let one of us know. We'll be happy to entertain you.
Okay, we'll be down there probably February. We come down and work with Bears Ears. So,
Sounds good. Anyone have any
All right.
questions? Are we ready to let John check off? Okay.
It really
Thank
is
you.
great to have
Bye-bye.
your support team, because there are little questions come up, they're answered. I mean, it just really simplifies things. So thank you.
absolutely. Keep me on speed dial.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.
All right. So it's 5:37. Let me just make some notes here. So I noted that, Jim, you jumped on at about 5:30.
That's correct. A little
So-
after, actually.
Well, I wrote down 5:32. So does that sound
That'll work.
right? All
Yep.
right. Okay, so again, working with Larson is really a breeze, and it has helped a lot to have Dave Sanderson implore us. So it makes a great way to get through an audit. And thank you, Linda, for all the work you do, Erin, for the work on the budget this year, and we'll see what happens in the next fiscal year with the $1 million grant increasing our anxiety. So let's go ahead and jump into the meeting because we did notice this for 5:15, so we can just keep moving. First is the approval of Bluff Town Council regular meeting minutes of October 17th, 2023. Has everyone read them? Are there any changes, modifications, points of discussion?
A motion to accept.
Second, Mayor.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Next is the approval of the Bluff Town Council work session minutes of October 24th, 2023. Same question. Any corrections, changes, modifications?
Motion to accept.
And I'll second that, Mayor.
Oh, any discussion? Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, it's unanimous. This is public comment. There will be a 3-minute time limit for each person wishing to make a public comment. If you exceed the 3-minute time limit without permission, the meeting controller will mute you. Signal before the meeting starts by putting your name in the chat box or raising the hand icon. Erin, did we have any public comment? All right. Then next is moving into the unfinished business. The first thing is discussion and vote on the active transportation master plan and the resolution. And so has everybody had a chance to go through the latest version of the active transportation master plan?
Yes.
There were some changes made after the one that was sent out. And I want to really thank the committee for making the changes that you did. It certainly, while I realize I was picking at a few things, it really seems to me to focus on Bluff and be exactly what the committee needs to move forward to try to get grants and funding. Lou, Jim, thanks for your work. Molly, I don't know if she's on, but it's a great plan. So does anybody have any questions for Luanne or Jim?
Mayor, if there are no questions, you know, we'll accept them and we can have a discussion, but I would like to make a motion to accept that master plan by the council.
So before, is there a second? And then I've just got one other thing to add.
Luanne, do you want to second that? You were involved.
Sure, I'll second.
Perfect.
Did everyone get a copy of the resolution as well?
Yes, the one you sent out just this week, I believe, or not long ago. It's the last one that you sent out. It's not an email that's not too distant.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the active transportation master plan as presented, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. Then can somebody make a motion about the resolution, which is resolution 2023-75 that would lay out the basis for accepting the plan?
Go ahead, Luanne.
All right, I'll make a motion to accept the resolution 2023-75.
And I'll second.
Any discussion or questions about it? Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
All right,
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then it's unanimous. I'm going to sign it right now so that I don't forget. And then Lou, nobody really talked about this, but I'm assuming that your committee will continue to work and make reports back as you go through the possibilities of funding.
yes, exactly. As we work through with UDOT and see which projects they pick, we're still hopeful maybe they'll select ours in their prioritization this fall. And we'll know that just in this next month or so. So yeah, we'll keep working. We still have meetings posted on the website under boards and committees. And the draft, the approved, or actually the approved plan will be still on the website. We had just a couple little typos. We'll get that updated, so there's none of that. But yeah, we're good to go. So I see Molly just joined, and we just did approve the plan. So we're happy about that, and we're really grateful for all of your support, and we're looking forward to seeing what comes next. Thank
Great
you.
work.
I especially want to thank, just take an opportunity to thank all the work Molly did. She really kept this thing going, and it was a lot of, just really sort of not real difficult work, but kind of just that persistence in making sure every detail came out right. And that's a lot of work right there. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much.
And Molly's probably really happy we passed it and approved it. She's thinking now Ann will be out of my hair, right?
No,
Great work. You all did a great job. So here's our fingers crossed for the funding and you getting chosen as a project. So
Yeah, and of course we've got to thank Bike Utah and the whole way that worked through the governor's office, because they're the ones that provided the funding. The whole legislators supported this whole trail project throughout Utah, and the funding came through the governor's office to Bike Utah, and they did our whole plan. It was really pain-free planning there. Really part of
and just to Debbie and then everyone who showed up every couple weeks for our meetings. It was a big effort. So thanks for everyone's contributions.
Just fantastic.
We
Thank
had
you
a
guys.
couple people in town that would show up every time. We had a couple of people that lived out of town that would show up that had trail experience. And so anyway,
good.
thank you for getting it to this point. We appreciate it.
Well, travel say, oh, hi, Molly's dog. Hey, Bear. All right, we'll move to number 2, announcement and discussion of the Environmental Protection Agency's award, which is the Environmental Justice Government to Government grant of $1 million for revitalizing the Cooperative Cultural Center for Health, Justice, and Inclusion. And I'll turn this over to Erin.
So I know we've talked about it a little bit over the last few weeks, but we did receive notification, I think it was October 16th, via an email that we were selected as one of the recipients of this award. This was something that we applied for back in April, and the EPA awarded 2 of these grants in the state of Utah. One actually, I think, went to the state of Utah, and then Bluff received the other. And so with this, we really focus. So Drew Cooper was instrumental in helping write this grant application. So he and I worked on putting that together with help from other members of the DRC. And this $1 million is going to go specifically towards big projects at the Cooperative Cultural Center. So written into the grant is money to make up for the rest of the fire suppression system. So we can say that that project is fully funded at this point. In addition to a lot of the other monies that we've been working really hard to obtain over the last few years. So that was a big one. We also have money set aside for asbestos mitigation. As we talked about earlier this year, we know that there's asbestos in some of the flooring in the hallways. So there's money set aside for that. I also called out other big systems like HVAC and electrical and just big system-wide projects that don't necessarily impact the aesthetics of the building, but are much more focused on how the building itself actually functions. So money for exterior insulation, you know, it's an old building. The insulation is not very good or existent in some portions. So with the grant application, we were able to prove out, you know, the need for the money in this particular building. But I want to remind folks that a big part of this particular grant is in regards to the partnerships that the town of Bluff holds with many entities throughout the area, namely Utah Dene Bakea as our primary partner, but it does name 6 additional partners in the area that would be impacted with this building coming online and being able to provide services to Bluff residents and also the greater region. So a big part of implementing this grant is ensuring that we're able to foster healthy relationships and really look out for community environmental justice results, essentially. So we'll have to prove some of that out. This is a federal grant, and so with federal funds come all kinds of regulations regarding how we do procurement, how how we find contractors and things like that. So that's going to be something that we're hyper focused on over the next couple months. We wrote that we would be able to spend this $1 million within 2 years. The grant itself would allow us to spend it up to 3 years, but our project timelines are set with 2 years. So we are going to get started as soon as possible. We will meet with EPA hopefully over the next couple weeks. It's hard now that we're kind of moving into it doesn't feel like it, but we are moving into holiday season. So we have not signed any official agreement or anything yet. They will coordinate with us to ensure that everything is spelled out and we understand what is expected of us. But I would think that over the next, based on some of my research, about hopefully before this, but 90 days, we will have an official contract in hand that we'll be able to execute upon. Does the council have any questions?
Just congratulations, and what a Herculean task that y'all have started here. I actually have some responsibility from a few years ago for this Herculean task, but we can do this, and it's going to be great. It'll be another reason for people to stop and spend a night or eat a meal in Bluff with the fort. We'll have a dual attraction area there. I'm super excited. Thank you, guys.
Any questions about the grant at this point? I just would like to add a couple things to what Erin said. First, I don't think there's enough thank you for the work that Drew and Erin did. I mean, Erin continued to do her full-time job as the manager and put this grant together with Drew, which I found amazing. And the grant is extremely well written. I think that the one other big bonus we have is that Erin understands or is taking the time to understand how we have to manage this grant. There's going to be just so much management and so much fine tuning of looking at the regulations to make sure we're in compliance, because only 70 grants in the country were given out on this in this project. And for us to get one of those was just amazing, which says a lot about how they wrote the grant with our partners, so that Utah Geneva Kea really fit into the partnership piece of it. But again, it's going to come with a lot of work and a lot of commitment. So here's my pitch to the community. For all of those who wanted to buy the building, they got us to the point of owning the building and now in a partnership. This is where you need to start stepping up to see what can you do to help support this committee and what can you do to help support the grant. It is going to take a village to implement $1 million grant at the size of our government. And we have other grants we're wrapping up, I hope, before the end of the year. So those of you who said, I want the school, I want the school, I want the school, we haven't seen you out here yet. So step up, let Erin or me know that you're interested. If there's anything you can do to help, if you have any expertise in federal funding and grants, let Erin know so you can touch base with her. But Erin and Drew, you knocked this one out of the ballpark. Thank you.
You know, I asked Erin earlier if this was her first $1 million grant, and she said yes. So I just want to
No, that's awesome.
Good
Yeah,
job.
thanks, you guys.
thank you, Drew, and everyone.
Yep. All right, moving on then to number 3, the update on the Cooperative Cultural Center. The Design Review Committee met today. Jim, I'll turn that over to you, and then everybody remind me to keep going on this number 3 or I'll jump to 4 by mistake.
Yeah, this was a regular meeting that we had, and it lasted a little over half an hour. It didn't take long. It only had 4 items on the agenda, and one of them was not really really very substantial. So what we talked about was the joint account, which is the machinery of the partnership and how that is working, and it seems to be fine. There is a new director in the offing with UDB that will start probably at the beginning of the year. Woody Lee is going to a lesser role, but he'll still be around and doing a lot of what he does now, I think. They have an accounting firm. I don't know if that's permanent or temporary, but everything is going so far pretty well. No hitches in the account that we know of. And we should get a policy on checks with the new director, since we're going to be dealing with a lot more money now. That's going to be a little more complex. But that's not out of reach at all. There will be, let me see. We're going to have a meeting with the UDB representatives in the next probably month over the grant. We talked a lot about the grant, a little bit about the grant anyway. We talked about the USDA coming down tomorrow. The mayor and I are going to meet with Colette. Don't know the last name, but there we are. We're going to be meeting with her at 3:30 tomorrow. So the rest of it was just kind of reporting and debriefing. We are going to talk about the bid projects, RFPs, all the technical details that are going to go along with spending this money. And we need to get that all straightened out with the partnership, but that again is not out of reach. So we had, I guess the fire suppression is going to be the first order of business, no doubt. And that needs to be figured out, a couple of things, but everything's going well, obviously. What did I miss, Mayor?
Only that Erin will also be joining us tomorrow at 3:30, and
Yes.
the woman from the USDA is Colette Walker. She replaced Mary Najaro, and excuse me, she will be bringing with her an engineer that works with them, and we're all Erin and Jim and I are hopeful that we'll be able to kind of pick the engineer's brain and the representative to make sure we can get this excuse me, the RFP out and get somebody on board and start the fire suppression. So, Erin, did you want to add anything? She was on the meeting too.
No, I think that about sums it up.
So this
I
next,
just wanted to add that we also met their new food, traditional food coordinator. Let me see if Melanie Daniels. She's from McCracken Mesa. She resides in Montezuma Creek, and she's their specialist in traditional foods. And she just kind of wanted to listen in.
You know, one thing we haven't really talked about, Mayor, is how much work Jim Sayers has put in on this school. So I want to give a shout out to Jim for getting us to where we are now. So good job, Jim.
Thank you, Brant. Thank you.
so maybe Jim and Brant should have run again. I'm not seeing any enthusiasm.
I'm going to be your code enforcement officer, Mayor.
Oh, now that's going to be fun.
Let's
Like
go to
it.
number 4.
All right, so next is construction at the Cooperative Cultural Center and a vote to approve a change order for $1,134, and then an update on the remodel of the community center and the repairs. Okay, so somebody needs to be muted.
I was going to make a motion to approve that change order, but I will mute and wait on that if you want me to.
So we needed to look at a change order because there was roughly slightly under 500 or 600 feet that had more work than we were aware of that needed to be bid on. And so I had Jim and Brant, I looked at it. I'm not a construction person. I had Jim and Brant go over. They looked at it. The three of us agreed that it needed to be done. Woody Lee was consulted. So I need to have ratification of the fact that I signed a change order without running it by the council, but we were in that three-week lull of no meetings, and I felt it wasn't a good use of your time to call it for $1,100.
I'll second Brant's motion.
Any questions or discussion? Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right.
It's unanimous. The ceiling is now, we believe, ready to start fire suppression work. So that's the next step. There's one room that will still need to be cleaned out because the fluorescent lights came down and UDB wanted us to save them. I think it's questionable whether we'll actually be able to use them, but they were not disposed of and were not bid on in the work that Weldon Construction did. I do want to make a comment about Weldon Construction. You know, we were looking at it as a ceiling tear out and kind of harmless. Well, they had one section of the ceiling when they took it down. There were rocks in the ceiling that came crashing down. The vents were held up with duct tape. So when they started taking the ceiling down, the vents crashed down around them. There was enough wiring in there to probably blow up the universe. It really was not a particularly safe work environment. And I commend them because I popped in several times and not knowing construction safe work habits, they look pretty safe to me, but had they not been doing that, those rocks were like huge that came down and they just, so thanks to Weldon Construction, and they've moved into the community center, and I'll let Erin kind of update what is going on with the community center.
So after a competitive bid process, Weldon Builders also received the contract to work on the town or the Bluff Community Center kind of back offices and hallway to make it more ADA compliant, as well as house the food pantry ultimately. In addition, this project also has monies associated with the insurance payout because of the flooding that occurred earlier this year over in the senior center. So the senior center is also getting new flooring to replace their damaged flooring, as well as some bathroom stuff. So they have started demolition, pretty major demolition over here. So we are out of the offices, if you can't tell from my very nice, however many square feet this is, 3,000 square foot office now in the gym. So demolition's underway. Again, major focus of this project is to ensure ADA compliance. This building's a little bit older and some of the bathrooms needed some assistance. We're also installing just easier to clean stuff for the senior center to help support their patrons on a daily basis. So that's really nice. Weldon Builders will move into the senior center this next week. And so their facilities are a little disrupted for about a week. And then they'll come back over and kind of finish up the job. I would expect, based on their initial timeline and initial quote, that we will probably see construction through about mid-December, early to mid-December. So if you are coming to the town offices, you might need to be a little bit flexible over the next couple weeks. Definitely feel free to reach out if you are not sure if we're going to be here. But as a reminder, and maybe this is probably a reminder down later as well, we do have the San Juan County election ballot box here. So if you need to drop off your ballots, you can still do that. But the box is kind of always in a secure location, but it's kind of it's a traveling box right now. So come find us and you can drop your ballot off. It is locked, but it has migrated out of the town offices to another locked location. So just so you know. Questions about the renovation at the community center?
No, it's looking very much under construction, and yeah, again, they're doing a great job and working around us, and we got some help today. Actually, Erin got a little help today moving. I am useless when it comes to lifting those file cabinets and whatever, but we're pretty much in a situation now where we're just going to shift from space to space while they work around us. And I had an email today from the governor's office on the budget asking when we would be spending our matching funds from the state of Utah under ARPA, because we had spent zero in the 2 years. And I was happy to report that we have spent almost all of our ARPA matching funds, which made them very happy. They'd like to see those in a report by the end of November, and we're about $1,000 short of spending that commitment. So we're moving along on that grant pretty nicely. And I think that covers number 4, or number 3 rather. And we can move into number 4, which is a good segue, the voting schedule. Today, Erin and I saw several people pop over to vote. San Juan County residents who didn't know or were unaware somehow that the voting had moved from today, the 7th, to the 21st. So this is a reminder. Yes, the ballot box is in the community center somewhere. We do not have ballots. The only time that you'll be able to get a ballot is when San Juan County is there on Thursdays from 10 o'clock in the morning to 2 p.m. Now, this is the most crucial part. If you didn't get a ballot, either call San Juan County or come into the office, and one of us will follow up with San Juan County for you. But we can't give you a ballot. Only Lyman Duncan and his team can help you do the vote without having your paper ballot in hand. And we've seen quite a few people who didn't get their ballot. And the other is we will only have the ballot box until the 20th, which is the day before we vote. San Juan County will pick that ballot box up and take it to Monticello. On the 21st, there will be in-person voting. Now, a change from what I recall the last years of mail-in voting. Your ballot must be postmarked no later than the 20th, not the 21st. So if you go to the post office and you ask the postmaster on the 21st, it will get stamped the 21st, but it will be discarded. So go the 20th if you're mailing that vote in. I think we've kind of hammered as much as we can to try to get the information out here. I'll have Linda do another blast this week with the same information to everyone. If you talk to anybody who says they didn't get a ballot and so they haven't voted, remind them it's not until the 21st. The voting day is the 21st. If they could have made it any harder to do this, Lou?
Just to clarify, on the 21st, they don't need to have their ballot. So if they've lost it or misplaced it, they can come and vote, like sign in, and they'll have ballots on that day. Is that true?
They should have that machine that they can pull it up, but I will confirm that with Lyman. I'm sure that that's the situation because it's in person. And then of course, if you don't have your ballot, you're going to need to have ID. That's valid ID, need valid ID. The other is that has thrown the wrench into it, as we've all been talking, is the canvassing. And so Lyman Duncan confirmed with me that yes, Bluff will canvass. However, his definition of canvass is not exactly what I would think canvass is. And Jim and I have talked about this. If the ballot box goes up to Monticello and they're counting the votes in Monticello and just telling us what the results are, in my mind, we should have someone there counting with them. It shouldn't just be them counting, because we would be asked then to vote to certify that everything was done correctly, that no votes were discarded that shouldn't have been, all of those things. And so Jim and I are working to figure out how we're going to know so that one of us can go. And I will talk to Jim tomorrow about contacting the state. I got information back about having a phone call with Shelley Jackson, who is the lieutenant governor's person for elections, to see exactly what we can do to make sure that one of us is available. Now, it's over the week of Thanksgiving, and I will not be in town. So that's going to be the other piece that we need to figure out, is who is here and who is willing to go on a date that we do not know has been nailed down.
I'm in town for Thanksgiving, Mayor, and I'm willing to go.
That's good to know. So Jim, I'll talk to you tomorrow about what Shelley said, and we can figure it out.
Okay, sounds good.
Any questions on the voting?
I can be available over Thanksgiving. Awesome.
Or I'll try to get some specificity from the lieutenant governor's office and then from Lyman Duncan. One last thing is that Erin and I talked, and she changed her days off. So she's in the office tomorrow. So the ballot box is covered. Thursday and Friday, Erin will be off. Friday's a federal holiday, which a lot of things will be closed, which will be nice. But on Thursday is it 8 to 10, Erin? And then 2 to 5, we need coverage because Lyman and his team will be there to do the in-person voting from 10 to 2 on Thursday, but not from 8 to 10 or 2 to 5. Now, I can probably grab the 2 to 5 slot with the exception of about a half an hour. But I definitely am looking for a body from 8 to 10 on Thursday. So if anybody has a suggestion, let me know, because I'll try to figure this out tomorrow. All right, then if there's nothing else on that, we'll move to the next topic, which is the petition by the Actons to disconnect from the town of Bluff, which was filed and served by Mr. Baird And of course, it came in during the 3-week period that we didn't have any meetings. But there really wasn't much for us to be doing. This becomes our legal counsel's production for a while. So we've been working with Chris McEnany at the same time that the Actons filed the verified motion to intervene by Sitla was filed. And so Sitla has joined in with the Actons to ask to disconnect. The Bureau of Land Management has done nothing to intervene, and I've heard nothing from them that would indicate that they're taking any action. So they have not been made a part of the legal proceeding. St. Christopher's Mission, Navajo Land, of course, explicitly did not want to join. And so they have no reason to be consulted in this. What this means is that by the 9th, our answer to the complaint needs to be filed and served. And tomorrow, the answer to the motion to intervene. So one of the things that we need to do is go into a closed session tonight because now it is no longer a threat, it's imminent litigation. Our attorney is available at 7, so if we get through the agenda, great. We'll just take a break till 7. If we don't get through the agenda, then we'll decide if it should the rest of it should just get pushed out to next week. But we're covering mostly the important things at this point. So not to talk strategy, but does anyone on the council have a question about process or what steps we're taking? Okay, with that in mind then, what I'm going to ask is Erin or Linda, if you can post, if it isn't already, once Chris sends us the final product, post everything, the motion to intervene, the complaint, and the answer. And just for council's information, because the statute only refers to petitioners as private landowners, if someone else who is not a private landowner, for instance, Sitla, wants to jump into the litigation, they have to ask to have permission to intervene. And Utah functions with permissive and kind of obligatory motions. So that's what that's about. Anyway, we'll move off of that for right now.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
So to confirm, you'd like everything posted on the town website, which would include our responses, our answers. And just for residents, you can find that under the residents resources tab when we have the approval to post that. So that's where folks would go find it. And there's like a section under items noted during meetings. So probably not right away, but it sounds like probably this week, Ann, is that?
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah. We should have everything probably by the end of the week, but I'd suggest everybody give Erin a couple of days off and have look at, Monday or Tuesday, but it'll all be out there. If there's no other questions on the process, we'll move to number 6. The Bureau of Land Management's determination on Bluff River Trail right-of-way. As we're all aware, with the land exchange between the BLM and Sitla, on the Bluff River Trail are some easements that were held by the BLM, and two of those parcels are in the proposed land exchange, meaning that if the exchange goes through as written, and there's no reason to believe it won't, then the parcels that are BLM become Sitla. And even though Sitla has assured us in writing that they would honor any existing easements, the way it was worded left wiggle room for the type of document that it became. And if the land exchange had gone through prior to us clarifying that, I could just see some major issues with Sitla on honoring something that wasn't in a documented form that they would honor. So after we had the conversations, there was a conversation with Jake Palma and the archaeologist about things. And so the BLM office, the Monticello office, has signed off and made those permanent, not sure what they call it, easements or right of ways, but they're held by the BLM. And those will exist as a matter of right when and if that land transfer goes through. So the parcels might become Sitla, but the BLM has protected those. And I got notice that they were signed, I think it was, let me just look. I'm thinking it was in mid-October that it was signed off, and they've been filed and recorded. So that's a good thing. I appreciate the BLM's speed at doing this. I believe the documents were sent to the River Trail, and Tina Krutsky, thank you for keeping me informed so that when they were done, I could just ask for copies from the BLM office. Any questions or thoughts on that?
That's great. Thanks a lot for your work on that.
I know, and BLM's a good partner. You know, it's a valued partner. So we should all recognize that.
And I don't know where this would have gone with Sitla, but it was just making everybody a little nervous. And I know the trail folks were working on it too with Jake and the archaeologists. So, it's mostly the trail, the Bluff River Trail, who really took the initiative. But I just kept following up because I knew it was important to us in this land switch, which I haven't heard anything about for a while. So I'm curious if anybody knows anything. Then moving to the discussion of the auditor alert 2023-01 public notice compliance for local governments. This is so routinely the auditor's department sends out these alerts. I'm just looking for my copy. And most of the time, they're just what I call kind of public information, but it tells you, this is changing or this is happening. And so I try to note the ones that are really necessary for all of us to know. But this notice walks us through what needs to be on the Utah Public Notice website, how you name your entity, how you put your contact information in. All these things have to be done with specificity and so that they match. And then the audio recordings must be on within 3 business days of the open meeting. You need to list all the board members. You've got to have your minutes both pending and approved. You need email addresses. And the reason this was sent out is there are entities that do not do this. They do not follow this. They don't use the public notice website. They don't post their meetings. Their agendas are rarely posted, and their minutes are basically non-existent or very late. And so the auditor's department, I guess, had enough complaints that they've issued an audit alert to us. And just skimming through it twice, we do all of that, but the only thing I'm going to double check is the compliance of matching various addresses to our actual place of business, because when you do 190 North 3rd West, what gets spelled out as a 3RD or N or a W, I want to make sure that we've got that consistent now, because we've had a little bit of a glitch in doing some reporting where one address showed up one way and then one spelled things out, and you can't even have it like an N. If it's an N, it's an N. But if you spell it out north, it's not accepted. So that's the only thing I'm going to double check, and otherwise we're totally in compliance.
There is one other thing. It says that we have to post name, phone number, email of board members. And I don't think we have phone numbers posted anywhere. We have the other things.
I think that they are, Linda, in the state auditor's report, because they don't go on the Utah Public Notice website. They go in the state auditor, but that's a good thing to check. I'm fairly certain we have the office phone number, but we'll just walk through it next week and make sure that it's all consistent. I have a feeling that since they've given 90 days for public comment, that they're not exactly moving on it quickly, but they're giving us all notice that you probably should be checking your information. Then if there's nothing else, we'll move to the next, which is the resolution approving, let's get it so I read it right, adopting the San Juan County multi-jurisdictional all hazard mitigation plan. And Erin did a very nice job of summarizing it. So Erin, would you mind redoing that summary for the group about what we worked on and how we participated?
Yeah, so this is a project that the county has been working on for many months, and I was actually really excited that we had a great deal of participation from Bluff compared to some other entities in the county. So the county held multiple listening sessions, multiple engagement sessions to get input from residents, to get input from our officials, from our folks. And I know Ann and Linda both went up to Monticello for a half-day in-person meeting, and then there were other virtual events that we attended. We also gave quite a bit of feedback when they were asking for it after everything was put together. And I should back up for just a second. The county did utilize a third party to help put this together that's very familiar with a vast array of all the terrible hazards that could happen. And so while this is something that, Bluff is kind of rolled up in, I think that we had a really large seat at the table in ensuring that our needs were represented with the extremely large geographical area San Juan County encompasses. I was slightly worried that our particular hazards in our area might not be well addressed, but I don't have that concern. They were very, very diligent in ensuring that each area is represented and they have a plan for us. I also think it's important to note that, plans like this, it takes a lot of time and a lot of financial resources to put these together. And probably at our stage in our incorporation, while we have a lot that we can ensure we cover internally, this is kind of all encompassing. So all that to say that it's helpful to have the county be able to do such a thorough job in putting this together. So like I said, this has taken multiple months, and we have certainly had a seat at the table throughout the construction plan.
And we need to thank the county for leading the way on this too. So they're a partner too, and look forward to working with them.
Yeah, it was actually a very good learning experience about what to think through in terms of hazards and what we might need to do to mitigate, in addition to getting on the phone and getting help from the county and then the state and from FEMA. But there were things like generators, like the generator that we were donated right after this mitigation plan started being worked on with us. It's like now we have 2 generators that have been donated. So things like that I would not have thought through. Really, this was helpful. So the final product is not out yet, but what Tammy Gallegos has requested is that we approve a resolution adopting the San Juan County multi-jurisdictional all hazard mitigation plan. And then they will be doing the fine tuning voting at some point, probably in December or January. And then it will be a final plan that will be handed off. So can I get a vote, a motion?
Motion to approve. Go ahead.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions?
Do you have the motion or the resolution?
I do. It went out at the same time the other one. Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then it's unanimous, and I'll get a copy up to Tammy Gallegos, and then it'll sit for a couple of months while they fine tune the rest of it. But I think the fact that we would not have had the resources to hire a national team that goes around and does this speaks a lot for San Juan County, including us. And we showed the greatest participation of all the municipalities. Number 9, discuss and vote on the stay of sign enforcement pending planning and zoning recommendations for revisions of the ordinance. So I mentioned it today in the work session, so you'd all have a heads up, but planning and zoning had been working on the ordinance related to signs. There also are several signs that planning and zoning believes are not compliant with the current ordinance. When Amanda Podmore and I talked after planning and zoning had had a couple of meetings, and then we talked about enforcement, that is something that even if we were to conclude that these were non-compliant signs, our ordinance is not completely airtight on like what is enforcement, how do you enforce it, and it just seemed to planning and zoning, and then to me, listening to Amanda and reading the various emails from business owners in particular, that the best thing to do while planning and zoning is working on revising and making a recommendation is that we just put a little lid on the enforcement action, not the compliance, not the ongoing compliance issues or coming to get a sign permit or any of that, but on the enforcement. And I would like to suggest 3 months to just let everything kind of settle down and let planning and zoning have their public hearing and get the input and see if we can mitigate some of the concerns on both sides.
I'll make a motion to stay the sign enforcement pending planning and zoning recommendations
For 90 days.
for 3 months. Yeah.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Any discussion or questions? Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? It's unanimous. So what I'll do is confer with Chris, probably on Monday, Chris McEnany, about whether we need a resolution or an amended ordinance or what we need to do. But it should be effective right now. I just didn't want to interrupt our attorney's time on this answer that needed to be dealt with this week. So I'll get back with you on Tuesday, but consider that nobody's going to be doing any enforcement. Then I think what I'll do is, this is where I'd like to go into the executive session, but Chris McEnany might not be available until 7. So what we could do is recess for half an hour, come back into our meeting, and then make a motion to go out of our meeting at that point. So if we wanted to take a recess until 5 to 7, and then I'll have us come back into the meeting, so that I'm not confusing everyone. We will all log off now because we've done all the business pretty much that we're going to do. Take a recess, come back in on this public channel, roll call again, and then have a motion to go into executive session at 7, and then log off of this and go into the executive session, not to come back at all into this.
Do you need a motion to make this happen?
Yeah, let's do a motion to do a recess.
Yeah. Okay. So made.
Second.
It is 6:30 p.m. All in favor say aye of recessing until 6:55.
Aye.
Aye.
I
Anyone opposed? All right, I'm turning off the recorder and hanging up.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.